Good morning. I hope you are having a beautiful morning so far. We are now officially in autumn. So I hope that that autumnal energy is hitting in nicely. I know I'm really glad that it's here. So today we have Ask Anything with a very special guest. It's Mary Sheila Gonnella. She is a fascinating, amazing nutritional consultant. I've certainly had the pleasure of working with, and I highly encourage everyone that has any kind of nutritional need to connect with her teachings and to, possibly consult directly with her. She has such wonderful things to say, very balanced approach, particularly utilizing Ayurveda, because she is also a student of DeAnna's. And now is someone that co-teaches with DeAnna, which is an amazing boon to us. They're a dynamic duo that just brings it. And the most exciting thing is that we have coming up this Sunday a 3-video series called The Ayurvedic Secrets to Food Alchemy that Mary Sheila and DeAnna are presenting. And I would highly encourage you to sign up. It starts on Sunday, but it's the kind of thing you can watch at any time. These are videos that just land in your inbox. So, you can listen to it while you're washing dishes, or you can sit down and make good time for yourself. Such inspiring information. But you know what? Let me have Mary Sheila tell you more about it.
Thanks, Andrea. So I'm happy to be here in the Ask DeAnna Anything and to step into her shoes while she's out today. And DeAnna has been a wonderful teacher for me. So I'll just share maybe just a little bit about my background as a nutritionist. And I am
information, but you know what?
Sorry. So I've been a nutrition consultant, board certified holistic nutritionist for almost 15 years now. And I love the world of nutrition. It's really supported me in my health journey. And I think that's how a lot of us sort of step into this field, is really having the experience of, for me anyways, food as medicine. Food literally became my medicine and helped to heal me. And from then on, I was just really sold and wanted to share the good word with other people and help them to decode and uncover. And it's funny because 15 years ago, nutrition wasn't like at the top of everybody's thoughts on how to heal. And nutrition was sort of like, yeah, food doesn't really make a difference. And I even had, when I wanted to study it, I had a friend who's like, what are you thinking? Who sees a nutritionist? What are you thinking? And so I went and kind of did a little something different. I actually studied Pilates and started doing that. And as soon as I sort of got established with Pilates, I started studying the nutrition and did a couple years at Bowman College and did a lot of work around hormones. I like to call our hormonal system, or the endocrine system, like your own personal team of first responders. And if we can balance those hormones, our hormones as best we can, they all have rhythms, they all ebb and flow. And if we can honor those rhythms and those ebbs and those flows and allow them to do their hormonal dance within our body to keep us balanced and homeostasis, that's the seat of health. And that is what I try to help my clients to find. So I do a lot of work around hormones and amino acid therapy and, blood sugar balance is a huge one for me, adrenal support. And what happened for me too, was that I knew DeAnna, we were friends because we both live in Occidental. And then suddenly, I kind of started to learn what she was all about and that she had this great program. And I think I went to see her first as a client and was pretty, blown open just by her knowledge base and her way of explaining my own symptoms and my own body and giving me a really clear path. And I was like, I love this. I'm so excited for myself and I want to learn more. And so I studied with her I forget when it was, but it was probably a good like 8 to 10 years ago. And it was amazing to learn Ayurveda and to learn it from her. I mean, she's just a brilliant teacher. And then right after that, I became a teacher for many years at Bowman College. And I was so grateful to have that example of her as a teacher. So that was really exciting. And so since then, it's just been, being in private practice and co-collaborating with DeAnna. We have been teaching a whole food Ayurvedic nutrition course for, gosh, I think at least 5 years now. And now it's online, and we're launching a free short little class that Andrea was just talking about called the gosh, oh my gosh, I don't want to get the name wrong. The Ayurvedic secrets of food alchemy, keeping everything straight, right? That we have going on. And that is going to be really a great class. It starts on Sunday, and I invite you to sign up. Hopefully you can drop a link down there, Andrea, and sign up and join us and learn more about, that's the beauty of Ayurveda, which if you've been listening to DeAnna, you probably have a good foundation. It's a science that's rooted in the elements. And when you see the elements in the outside world, and then you see them in your own body, it becomes a way of thinking about, how can I just course correct what I'm doing? Oh, I'm running really hot. How can I course correct? I'm cold. How can I course correct? I feel really dry. I feel too wet. How can I course correct and use the outside world, use the elements to support that? So that's a lot of what I love about Ayurveda, and just my journey with DeAnna as a mentor, as a friend, and now as a co-conspirator in all this whole food Ayurvedic nutrition that we like to call edible Ayurveda. Yeah.
That's awesome. I just love your synergy with DeAnna and the way you guys just complement each other. I really love when you are in the kitchen together, even if that togetherness is virtual, just the fun and the laughter and the inspiration that you bring to the recipes that you blend up and make up together. And I also just love how simple it is to solve problems through food. Got to eat, might as well make that powerful. We do have a couple of questions today that I bet have a very interesting nutritional perspective of them. So I'm going to go ahead and dive in. Our first question comes from Barbara. And she says, I have a 14-year-old daughter who struggles with acne and constipation / digestion issues despite eating well, exercising regularly, and drinking plenty of fluids. Her period is not regular either for the past 6 months. She does all the right things, so it's perplexing to us. Are you familiar with or have had success in helping with these issues in a teen before?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's so common as we change and, come into puberty and our hormones kind of come on, and it definitely spurs on a lot of activity on the inside. And then it can, kind of show itself on our skin and our face. And, there's in Ayurveda too, there's the face map. And so in some ways you can also see like, well, where is this acne? Oftentimes around the chin area and the lower face, it is the more hormonally related. Here is a little more stomach. And then, up in the forehead, it can be more digestive. So you can take a little look at where is this happening. But hormones are not the whole story, even though, it does come on at that time. Often testosterone, as it's kind of making its way and our body's figuring out more testosterone, even girls, we all produce testosterone, men and women, men more, but testosterone can spur on more acne as well. There would be more questions that I would have if I could have a conversation. So I would wonder, if there is, especially in the last, 18 months or whatever, if there is more stress and anxiety around our global situation, And oftentimes there is a little more of a holding pattern that can happen in the intestinal tract when there's more worry and nervousness. And holding and can lead to constipation, can then lead to what we call kind of putrefaction, and really just maybe like a change or a shift in our microbiome. And so that would be another way to look at it digestively, right? And look at how can we make sure that things continue to move through the digestive tract and we're not constipated, and things move through, especially, because those become patterns in our life, right? So I would definitely look at like stress levels and see whatever can be done. And that's a tough one at 14. I have a 20-year-old now, and you have a daughter too, Andrea. So we know it can be challenging. So making sure, one of the things I learned early on in the whole pandemic from one of the doctors that I work with. I remember there was a mother who was really worried about her kids and their learning. And I remember the doctor saying, during this period of time, the most important thing is for your children to just feel safe. Like, we still want them to learn their math and their science and all those things, but if they can feel safe, then you're winning. So, making sure just to look at that piece. And then, to take it a step further, it sounds like you have a lot of good nutrition in place, which is awesome. Sometimes, since 70% of our immune system is in our gut, we have to look at what could be maybe causing inflammation, what could possibly be inflammatory. And it could be that it could be some of the foods that we're eating, and maybe even foods that we've always eaten, but sometimes we can have allergies to the foods that we're eating. And, even the way some of our foods are produced can be more allergy prone. Dairy, I'm not against dairy at all, but it is definitely can be connected with face and acne, sometimes gluten. I would say the top allergens just to pay attention to would be, the gluten, the dairy, even eggs can be a big allergen, corn, soy, and sugar. So we want to make sure that foods that we're eating are not creating an inflammatory response, and that inflammatory response is eventually sort of showing itself on the face in the form of acne. So those are a lot of foods. Those might be foods that we're like, oh my gosh, well, I'm eating all of those foods, or I only eat, it's more looking at like what foods we might be eating maybe too much of, and experimenting, maybe get rid of the dairy first and see if that makes a difference. And the other one is just, if there is constipation, we know the microbiome might be a little bit off. We call that dysbiosis. So if the microbiome's a little bit off, then, it's going to be about making sure that things are moving through. Now, when it's off, sometimes some of those bacteria can kind of, even the ones we don't want in certain places, can kind of arrest our cells of motility and create a little bit more constipation. Ginger is a great ally for that. So drinking ginger tea in between meals can be a great way to make sure things keep moving, or even having some tea before a meal is a great digestive ally to keep things moving along. Spices, in general, spices will all be kind of good, but ginger is very specific to helping with motility. Sometimes even digestive enzymes, even doesn't have to be forever, but just to support the digestive process with making sure that you and your daughter, that you're modeling good sitting down at the table, eating a meal, taking it slow, chewing our food really well, making sure we're getting the most from our food. So mindful eating is going to activate our digestive enzymes. Sometimes adding a little bit of digestive enzymes can be helpful as well. And then things that support healthy skin are things like vitamin A, basically, I would say like the fat soluble vitamins, which is interesting because those often, many of them can come from dairy products or from animal proteins or animal fats. But things like vitamin A, even vitamin D, vitamin K2, vitamin E, vitamin C, and the B vitamins are all going to be helpful in supporting healthy skin. So, a good varied diet, possibly, and the other, actually, another one is zinc. So pumpkin seeds are really high in zinc. So adding pumpkin seeds, zinc is a great ally to supporting skin health. And so are some of the good, like omega-6s. So good nuts and seeds. I mean, good nuts and seeds. Nuts and seeds in general have omega-6, omega-3. But the best way to eat them is more when they're raw or sprouted versus if they're roasted, and the oils, because the oils are very fragile. Our EFAs, our essential fatty acids, which I'm sure DeAnna talks a lot about on these calls, they're very sensitive to heat, light, and air. So we want to eat them more on the raw side than on the cooked side.
That is amazing. I hope that her daughter's able to find some relief from that. So let me go on to our next.
Oh, you're muted.
Whoops, by the way, we've got Martha with us today. She's definitely a fan. We see her on most broadcasts. So hi, Martha, glad you're here. All right, our next question comes from Gabby. Gabby says, I'm 33 and I notice my hair is thinning. I've stopped coffee and I'm trying to get stress under control. So are there any ideas here on why my hair is falling out?
Yeah, definitely. I think you're on the right track with eliminating, excess caffeine, because it can raise our cortisol, which cortisol is a hormone that is released from our adrenals in response to stress. So trying to get a handle on stress and trying to get it, and things that can raise our stress response, like caffeine, two great ideas. Then, the thing about our hormonal system, and oftentimes when our hair begins to thin, one of the first places we might look at is the thyroid gland, because the thyroid has a lot to do with, a lot of times people's hair will thin. Sometimes even the outer third of your eyebrows will also thin. So it's something you can look at as kind of a clue. And, I would say others, sometimes common symptoms with a low thyroid, so you could see if these add up for you at all, would be feeling a little bit more cold, especially in your hands and feet, maybe more constipated. Sometimes we have harder time burning fat. So even on a lab, your triglycerides might be elevated as well. And just more sluggish and tired and kind of harder to get up and go. So I would recommend that you might want to get a thyroid panel done just to rule that out, because that can often be connected to thyroid function. But it's interesting because we have different names for some of the ways our hormones work. And one of the big ones that you may have heard of before is called the HPA, which stands for the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis. And that is basically when there's any kind of stress, the hypothalamus, which I call the CEO of our hormonal system, talks to the pituitary, sends a message, and the pituitary is like the manager. And it's like, okay, I'll send a message to whatever gland down below that you tell me to. And in the case of any kind of stress, it's going to send a message to the adrenals, and then the adrenals are going to help us with any kind of stress, whether it's, like I'm scared to, like, oh my gosh, this email is stressing me out, or I didn't sleep well, or I'm really hungry because I haven't eaten and my blood sugar's out of whack, or this food is allergenic to me and I'm having a response. But we can go so far. A lot of doctors and clinicians will call it the HPAT axis, hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal, thyroid axis. because the adrenals and thyroid are so connected. So and this is actually an image that DeAnna put in my head years ago. It's like this idea that if we're under a lot of stress, it's like the adrenals are going to pull on the thyroid, and it's the thyroid that can kind of pull the brakes on us. So in any kind of like if your glands are like working overtime, right? And if you know that you've had more stress, then you can just like, this will be good advice for anybody who's like, I have been more stressed, is you want to focus on nourishment. It's like nourish, nourish, nourish. And you want to eliminate as many stressors as you can. So you want to try to stabilize your blood sugar. So think about, starting your day with a good breakfast. I know intermittent fasting is like really popular and it has its place. And your intermittent fast can even end earlier in the day, but it's important to fuel yourself up if you have more stress. If you're trying to support thyroid, adrenals, or, maybe you don't know at this point, you want to support yourself and get your blood sugar balanced, because that's a part of your hormonal system. And if it's not balanced, it's more stress. Good meals, you want to make sure your meals are focused. There's always protein there, healthy fats, a bit of starch and greens, right? So breakfast is protein, fat, and fiber. And I've written a whole thing on my website called the Breakfast Report on my website, Occidental Nutrition. And I just kind of break down why a good breakfast is so important in the Breakfast Report. So you can kind of read that if you would like. But so you want to have good balanced meals to balance your blood sugar. When it comes to hair, biotin is a really great B vitamin. But let's talk about the whole family of Bs, because, we don't always want to just supplement with one B, because, they're a whole family that kind of like to be together. So B vitamins are going to be found in like all of our leafy greens and nuts and seeds and whole grains and whole beans, even in animal proteins as well. But we definitely want to make sure we're getting a lot of good B vitamins. We also want to make sure we're getting good vitamin C and, collagen, and some of those fat soluble vitamins again. So, it is key. It's interesting again, like there would be more questions I would have for you, but, the other question is like, how's your digestion? Are you able to access your nutrients well enough so that the good foods that you're eating are making it, through your digestive tract and into your blood to then, help you with healthy hair growth? All of that is going to make a difference. So, yeah, so I don't know if you want to follow up with any other questions about that for me, Andrea, if I missed anything there.
No, I think you got a lot covered on that one. That's a really important factor. I mean, it can happen to all of us. I was sitting there really like, let me pay attention here. Just meeting my own needs regarding stress. I don't have the same symptoms, but this is valuable information really for any.
I mean, yeah, when we're in this time of our life, 30 to, any time in our life, it's like, too much stress is too much fire. And too much fire, long period of time, is going to kind of dry us out. So thinning hair is kind of more of a drier symptom, right? So we want to think about that. And I just want to come back to one thing that I said around, digestion. And that's one of the things that in our edible Ayurveda course that we teach is like, looking at each digestive organ and making sure that it's functioning properly, right? Like, let's take our stomach, if we don't have enough stomach acid, that's the sort of kind of the headwaters of our digestive tract, our mouth, and then it sits in our stomach for a few hours and it cooks. And if our pot is not going to cook our food, then we're going to have a hard time accessing any of that down below, right? And where we absorb it. If there's too much fire, or maybe there's too much food and things, instead of going in a downward motion, they start to rise, right? And then that can be problematic too. So there's a lot of things that we want to think about when it comes to digestion, especially there's so many people that I meet and that I work with that are we all approach it differently, and there's so much information out there, but there's a lot of people that are doing a lot of the right things, but they're still not getting the results, and there's still some missing links. And so it's uncovering, well, why are the dots not connecting in your physiology to make, good hair? Why is your hair getting thin? Why are you constipated, even though you're eating well and have acne, even though you're taking good care of yourself? Like, all of those things make a difference. And just to actually circle back for 1 second, because I realized something is, our skin is our biggest organ, right? So it's so important about like what we put on it, and also to respect the natural oils that are there. And sometimes we could be, wiping out the microbiome of the skin more than we need to be, right? We might need to take off our makeup at the end of the day, but we don't need to wash it more than that, just that. We want to have those natural oils and that natural bacteria that's a part of our own microbiome, because our microbiome, it's not just in the gut. It's kind of like it's everywhere, but there's a lot more in the gut.
That is fascinating. I'll have to look into that. I do want to ask you one thing that has come up around breakouts on the skin and surfacing symptoms is yeast. We get a lot of people asking about yeast. So can you talk a bit about the presence of yeast in the body and how to maintain good equilibrium on that?
Yeah. And I feel like, yeast is a type of fungus, basically. And, that is also, kind of unfortunately, something I'm seeing a lot in my practice too is, mold and fungal overgrowth and things like that, just because there's about maybe 25% of the population who have a really hard time with mold. Some people, like my husband's a plumber, and he goes under houses, and, under houses, you can sometimes smell the mildew and mold, and he's, it's not good for his health, but he doesn't, crawl home all sick because the house was a little bit moldy. So, but some people, they really are that sensitive to mold, and fungal overgrowth is very common. Sometimes it can be on our toes. Sometimes it can be, we can smell it coming out of our sweat. It can be, it's concentrated in certain areas. And then it can be also in the lower region, in the vagina. It can also be in the digestive tract. So it's like the question kind of is, where is it? And then how do we rebalance it? How do we get here? So a lot of times we get it because of antibiotics. We are exposed to antibiotics, maybe because we've taken them. So that was part of my story, is that when I was growing up, I was on a ton of antibiotics. And that really affected my microbiome. And I had a lot of yeast infections all growing up for a long time. And, so I know it was in my digestive tract. I also know it was in my vaginal canal. I mean, it was kind of everywhere. So I had to work really hard to get rid of that. And so when I started eating fermented foods, when I learned what they were, I could not stop. I think I overdid it, because one time my husband was like, "Whoa, you kind of like smell like sauerkraut." But I know that, sometimes it's those kinds of foods that can help combat that. It's eating less sugar, it's eating foods that are going to help the other bacteria flourish. And when we are on antibiotics, the thing about antibiotics is it kills the bacteria, but it doesn't kill the fungus. And way back in the 50s, they used to give people antifungal at the same time as the antibacterial, or, antibiotic, because to help keep those things at bay. We don't really do that anymore. And so that can be kind of a problem. There's also antibiotics in our food system, and herbicides and pesticides, and all of those things are going to kind of kill off a lot of our bacteria and maybe leave it for the fungus to grow. So we want, yes, bacteria, keeping that balance is a good thing. And, ultimately what we eat every day is going to either feed more of the fungal or feed more of the bacteria. And so the more we have our, what we call prebiotics, or just plants that we're eating, all of the greens, like the more colorful your plate is, like the rainbow from all the plants, the more you're going to be feeding and crowding out the fungus. It's always going to be there. It's just a matter of how much is in there and how much it's crowding out. I do have a favorite probiotic, which is actually a fungus, but it's a beneficial fungus, and it's called Saccharomyces boulardii. And that is a strain of like fungus. It's a fungus, but it's a beneficial one. And it's a great one to get in there and like kind of help fight off the, the other kind of candida species that we don't want to be in there. We also want to eat less sugar. And I think what I learned from my own experience was that it is definitely, it's hard. It was really hard for me to be like uber strict, and follow something like the body ecology diet, which is like such a strict diet. I have a hard time with that. I'm a nutritionist. I love food. I love helping people. And I also am not perfect. And that was always hard for me. I always felt like I was failing. But I've also learned that I don't think it's about perfection. It's just about consistency. And then over time, right, the colonies and the communities shift and change, and the fungus can get weeded out. And sometimes we need the support of things like the Saccharomyces boulardii or antimicrobials, in specific foods, and maybe medications and, antifungals that are prescribed by the doctor, like whatever it takes, it's a journey. And, once you have a little bit of a yeast overgrowth, at least this is my experience, it's a little bit of a tight rope. Like if I go rogue and start eating a ton of sugar, then I'm probably going to, I'm probably going to stoke out all that fungus, and they're going to be like, whoo, well, here we go again. So I have to be careful. And so eating healthy, eating good whole foods is just, luckily I love it. And it's just, it works. And I dedicate a lot of energy, to making sure that I'm set up with my meals. And I'm not, because if, let's say I don't eat all day long and I get way too hungry, then I'm probably going to go for the, sugary, more refined foods, because like it's hard when you're super hungry and your cortisol's high and your blood sugar's low, like physiologically, it's much harder to be like, oh, I'll just have, whatever. I'll just wait and cook this whole big meal. No, I'm going to like see what's in the cupboard and go for it. Right. And that's kind of what can happen.
That is so fascinating. I could listen to all those details forever. Coming back to the really exciting video series that you and DeAnna are going to be embarking on this Sunday, can you tell me, what is food alchemy exactly?
Yeah. So, DeAnna and I have this really cool 3 video series that we are putting out there, and the Ayurvedic secrets of food alchemy. And I think, I'm like, what is the definition of alchemy? But to me, it's just the synergy. And it's a way, I think, too, that we can think about the foods we're eating and also not necessarily put ourselves in a box like, oh, I'm Pitta, I cannot have anything fermented, or, I'm this, I can't have this, or it's allowing us to say, gosh, who am I? What do I need now? And what is going to feel good? So we have 3 videos, and the first one is called, it's all about look. And it's sort of like our body doesn't lie. Like and I know DeAnna likes to say, what you see is what you get, and how you look is often how you feel. Right. So we'll share with you more about like how your outer appearance, what it has to say about your inner balance, and how you can get help to make those choices, right? So that you can kind of figure it out that way. And then we go into feeling, and we talk a little bit about our emotional state and how those symptoms go hand in hand. And, one of the things about Ayurveda that I absolutely love and was really so much of it was just, for me as a nutritionist already, it was just a way for me to peel the onion deeper and really understand at a deeper level. But in Ayurveda, it's like everything starts with our emotions. So if I have an emotion and, and it kind of gets stuck in the body, it's almost as if it gets stuck in our energy centers, right? Because emotions around, maybe around safety or about guilt or about, our ability to take action and do things or speak up and use our truth and speak up at our truth, or like forgive ourselves or love ourselves or trust ourselves, right? So we have all these things, like we feel all this regret and it gets stuck. And that stuckness is the emotional. It's kind of the first step to dis-ease. And then, then it maybe, it's stuck and then it manifests in a health way. And then, so it's like first the emotion, then the physical, and how do we address this? So really connecting the dots between, even emotional eating, which so many of us can connect to. It's like emotional eating is really what a lot of us do in response to how we are feeling. So we talk about that. And then in the third video, we talk about achieving your dreams. Like what can you do to take charge of your health with your alchemical food choices? So in this video, we mix and match some different spices and just show you how you can create some really wonderful spice blends. And, DeAnna has this thing that, I learned from her, and I'm glad you like us watching us in the kitchen. Like it's always so fun for us in the kitchen, because it's when there's two foodies, it's like, oh my God, that's such a great idea. And DeAnna talks a lot about making like a spice broth as like the baseline of your meal. And that was like so exciting for me when she shared that with me, because one of the things I love to talk about is like, how can you really layer the flavors, right? Layer the flavors, and then also really like layer the meals so that if you're, more pitta and more hot, like you can have a ferment. It's like but how do you have it so that it still works for you and it doesn't like, heat you up and make you, not feel well? How can you do that? And how can you create a spice blend that might be good for your whole family versus, something that's just like hot, spicy that, only one person likes and everyone else is like, that's too hot for me. That's a little bit of my family. But yeah, so we just go into these 3 videos to just really share with you, like just to give you the foundations of Ayurveda, the elements, and how to look at food and see, we talk a lot about our own constitutions, like, oh, I have more vata and pitta or kapha, but then we say, well, what about food? Is this food, and if we really break down the, vata, pitta, kapha, it's like, oh, vata is more air and ether. It's a little drier and colder, right? And then we've got, like pitta, which is hot and fiery and wet. And then, kapha, which is water and earth. So if we look at those elements, like, wait, I can see those in my foods. Like it's so hot right now. And I have a juicy melon in the fridge, and that's going to be a great afternoon snack to meet that dry heat of fall. And look at how Mother Nature provides it for me. Like it's actually from my own garden. I grew these 2 big, beautiful watermelons this year, but like there we have it, right? We've got Mother Nature providing us with exactly what we need in that time, right? So then it's a matter of like, well, how much would be good for me? And when is a good time for me to eat it? Like it might not be the best for me to eat it in the morning. I might need to start my day more with protein fats because I've got a full day of seeing clients and helping people, and I need to be grounded with my blood sugar versus, in the afternoon, my blood sugar's balanced. I'm going to have some watermelon when it's like kidney adrenal time. I'm going to electrolyte up my body with that juicy melon. I hope everybody's watching this has some nice fruit in the afternoon today, but you see what I'm saying? But it's just really kind of helping you connect that, because I think that's one of the things that's really common these days is there's so much information. And, sometimes I hear people saying like, I eat this, but I don't really like it, but I think it's good for me. And it's really about coming back to our own body wisdom, or I'm so overwhelmed. Like there's raw, there's vegan, there's keto, there's paleo, there's all these things. And sometimes one of those might be right for you, but it might not be right for you forever. Like, paleo or keto is very building, but do you need to be building all the time? Raw vegan is very cleansing, but is there going to be times where you need to build a little bit more? And so I like to tell people, like, maybe don't put yourself in a box. Like, can you be a flexitarian? Just be flexible and see what feels good. And if you feel like you're craving something that you told yourself you weren't going to have, or you announced to all your friends, I'm eating this way and this is how I am, but then all of a sudden you're craving it, it's okay to take yourself out of that box. I mean, we are provided with this food abundance to also meet it with our own intuition. And so that our food can meet our physiology and really heal and cleanse and nourish, and support us to do the work and be of service in whatever ways we are for each of us in the world.
That is so insightful. I know I struggle with a dichotomy within me. I'm kapha wet and vata dry. So, I found a lot of success with keto because that is, both, it can be both cleansing and a little bit of nourishing, and it keeps the sugar down. But at the same time, I'm feeling like a remarkable amount of dryness and anxiety. So I got to look at, where am I getting nourished? How am I grounding? Maybe there does need to be a little sweet in there. So it can be a really big challenge to look at all of the ways that symptoms are manifesting and then how to meet that. So it's lovely that there is something dynamic like food that can allow us to sort of just take a look at the day. What am I feeling today? What is going to nourish me? Or cleanse me or rev me up today? And yes. I think that's a lot of what you guys are presenting. I love what you said earlier about going rogue. And as an emotional leader, in stressful times, I do tend to go rogue a little more often than I ought to. And I wonder if you can speak to, like, say I have a crazy night where I just pop open a bottle of wine and I eat a bunch of stupid snacks. And the next morning I wake up with regret, maybe a little headache. What is a good way to bring balance back to your body once you have kind of taken that little, like, wild step going outside of what your body may truly need? What do you think about that?
Yeah. And, I think what you kind of led up there with that of, like, one day at a time. And I think number one, it's important to let ourselves off the hook. And also, sometimes when you feel kind of crappy like that, it's there, I like to turn it around and say, wow, thank goodness I don't do that all the time, because I know how that feels. And okay, so thank you, universe, for reminding me that doesn't feel good. And I don't want to do that all the time. So there's that piece. And then, I'm such a big fan of, even that next day. I mean, and it's fine if you don't, like, it's not like you have to get up and, like, have breakfast at 7:00, but, like, make that first meal, your breakfast, like a good choice that is about eating, some healthy proteins, fats, and fiber. And it can be lighter. I mean, sometimes it might be like, I'm going to have like a breakfast salad. I'm going to have lots of greens that can really kind of help, kind of just give my liver some of what it needs. Maybe some aloe vera juice would be in order. Foods that are high in B vitamins can be a good ally as well there too. But I think, knowing that we can start the next day fresh, letting ourselves off the hook, thanking the universe that, that's not our daily pattern. And the other thing too, is sometimes it is about looking at, like, how we were feeling, yesterday when we did that, like, and it could even be a little bit of journaling and thinking about, like, what is it that spurred that on? What was I feeling emotionally? Because I think, even though it was in the past, like, if we can tap into those emotional feelings, then, knowing that if we have that again, we're going to be reminded, oh yeah, I wrote about this last time and these were the emotions, and gosh, do I have that? Can I connect to that right now? And, I teach a mindful eating class. I have for years now. at a clinic. And, one of the things I like to say is like, taking a mindful moment, and like mindfulness in action. So, let's say like you were going to do that again. And you're just like, sometimes people call it like the F-its. I don't know if I can cuss on this, but it's like, I have a case of the F-its. And so it's like, all of a sudden you're just like, F it, I don't feel like cooking, or maybe the kids are gone. I'm just going to, cheese and crackers and wine or whatever. And so in that moment, like, even if you choose to do that, it's like mindfulness in action. Can you just take a little space and step into that space and tap into, okay, is this really like, I'm going to do this? And can I just connect to and clearly with my whole self, make that choice? And, and even if you choose to do it, then hopefully you can like let yourself off the hook a little bit more, so you don't have the feelings of guilt that are associated with it. Or are you going to say maybe like, okay, yeah, I still might crack open the bottle or whatever, but I'm also going to, add something else to the meal to make it more of a complete meal, like, and so there's just different ways of approaching that, and that, so hopefully sometimes those habits start to find a place where they're less frequent, and then also, again, honoring ourselves. I find that, in the morning, making a good choice for breakfast is a lot easier for most people. That's because our serotonin is higher. And serotonin is like kind of a feel good neurotransmitter that, we feel good about ourselves. We feel good about our choices. We feel calm, confident, at ease. We're satisfied. Whereas the end of the day, as the sun goes down, our serotonin wanes, and we want to boost it kind of falsely with, think about like, 5 o'clock somewhere, beer 30, 420, all these things that are connected to our low serotonin and our cravings. Oh, I love having, chips in the afternoon. Right. There's all these different things that we might be craving in the afternoon that are, because we have low serotonin. So a good breakfast with adequate proteins and fats is always going to be a great way to set ourselves up for success when it comes to serotonin. The other thing that can help with cravings is in the afternoon. Sometimes you might say, okay, I think I am going to like crack open that wine or whatever, but I'm going to go for a little walk first. Getting out in nature, going on a walk can also boost our serotonin. Having like a little maybe saying, I'm going to have a couple of olives and maybe a little like, some nuts and seeds, just to kind of see if that can kind of take the edge off of my hunger, healthy fat and a little protein there. Getting sunlight in the morning. So going outside in the morning with your first, like your morning beverage and letting the sun come in, that helps set up our circadian rhythm, and that supports serotonin levels. And then also saying like, what else can I do besides, a lot of us are a little more lonely. We are not as social anymore. Even me, like I love going out and teaching, and all my teaching has been on, in front of my little green dot on my Zoom, so like, can I maybe just call a friend, and connect with somebody socially, or, so that I am, boosting my serotonin in a different way than, foods that I might have kind of a little addiction to, or, alcohol, which is kind of a false way of boosting serotonin.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for that. So we've got a question from Martha, who's here with us now. Martha is asking about what she's experiencing is the opposite of constipation in her body. And she's also experiencing a lot of stress and low energy. My hit is that it sounds like a lot of depletion, overheating. So I wonder what you've got to offer on that one.
Yeah. So she has more overheating and constipation. Is that kind of what? Okay. Yeah. So I would say that, definitely, in a case like that, wet foods, like, again, another little DeAnna saying, warm, wet, and in a bowl can be helpful. And, anything that is like more green and wet too, is going to be cooling. So the minerals like magnesium and calcium and things like that are kind of more of our alkalizers, which are also kind of considered more cooling in the body. So cooling foods, even fruits. So, really thinking about like what's in season right now. What is in season right now is very hydrating. Even like the root vegetables and the winter squash, and the cucumbers and the melons, those are all going to lend themselves to be very hydrating and electrolyte rich. And that is a great way to think about kind of keeping things moving along. Apples and pears. Apples are great for moving the bowels and the digestive system as well. So
she
all of
doesn't have constipation. She's got the opposite of constipation.
Oh, she's okay. I'm sorry. That's why I was kind of asking for clarification at the beginning. Okay. So she's got a lot of heat. Okay. So I mentioned earlier the Saccharomyces boulardii, which is a probiotic yeast that's good. Sometimes that can also really help firm up the stools. And then, oftentimes like that's a lot of excess heat, and even the liver might be kind of a little bit more hot, moving things along. So, I always have more questions that follow up the first question. So sometimes even things like, even things like, a little more grains, like even things like rice can be helpful in kind of slowing things down, making sure you're getting enough fiber. And I would look and see if there's any foods that might be associated with, maybe that you're having an allergy to. And also even things like, caffeine can be a loose stool maker. Sometimes dairy can do that to people. So if there's any foods that you feel like you might have like a yum factor you love, and you can't imagine your life without it, sometimes just putting that out of the equation for a moment can be good. But I do love the Saccharomyces boulardii for helping to firm up the stool. That's one of the things that it does. So that would be probably something I would try, along with, maybe not as much warm, wet, and in a bowl, and maybe a little more like solid foods, like less smoothies and things like that, and more like eat your food, chew your food. So there's just more solid coming in than liquid.
That is great. I hope that gives Martha a bit of relief there. Well, looks like we're kind of getting close to the end of our time. I want to let everybody know that of all the really amazing things that Mary Sheila mentioned today, I'm going to be putting links in the show description. Please sign up for that Ayurvedic Secrets of Food Alchemy class. It is free, which is awesome. And it's easy. You don't have to show up anywhere in particular at any time in particular. So that email comes to you, that video comes to you, and you can watch it when it works for you. And there's going to be so much great information. DeAnna and Mary Sheila really love to help and be of service and just give all the good stuff that they know. And they know a lot of good stuff. Yeah, so I'm going to be, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think we figured out, even though I don't look like I'm either, says DeAnna, but we've collectively been teaching for like 40 years, which sounds so weird because I'm still in my 40s, but we've been collectively teaching for so long, just, yeah.
That's amazing. That's the good work to do for sure. Yeah. I'm going to be posting a link to the sign up page. So look for that. Also, don't forget, we still have a collaboration that we're doing with Banyan. That's number one and forever and ever. We love them. And that you can stock up on nourishing, healthy Ayurvedic herbs and spices through our connection there. And I'll post that link as well. And don't forget to like this video if you like what you heard. Subscribe to this channel so that you can get notifications of when we go live on Thursday mornings. That's every other Thursday. And all this yummy information is also available on our podcast, which is still kind of new and super exciting. And that podcast is on Spotify, it's on Apple Podcasts, it's wherever you pod. So take a look for that. Take a listen, subscribe, leave a review. That can help us spread the word to everyone else. Also try to take a look at us on the social media, Facebook and Instagram. It's been a real pleasure having you here with me today, Mary Sheila, and I'm so glad that you spread some amazing stuff. I have to tell you, my number one takeaway from today is that phrase, thank goodness I don't do this all the time. I'm going to be telling myself that as I go rogue.
As you go rogue, exactly. That's awesome.
So yeah, thank you so much. I hope
Thank
everybody
you.
enjoyed. And we'll see you next time.